Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to PBA at noon. I'm Paul Benwell, and I'm joined by my colleague, Sophie Caesar. Excuse me if I look a little tired. I was up late last night watching the U.S. networks following the U.S. election. It'll be interesting to see how the election plays out this week. It should have a result by Friday, the latest, I think. The environment has been at the forefront of this election and on the agenda for many governments around the world. There is no denying that the demand for electric vehicles is on the upswing to help reduce air pollution. This has created an increased need for battery metals. Today, we have CEO Mark Appleby from Tartisan Nickel joining us. Tartisan is well positioned to be in this battery market through its multiple projects and investments. Tartisan trades on the CSE under the symbol TN. Mark, thanks for joining us. Please go ahead with your presentation, and we will take questions from the audience when we're finished. Thanks, Mark. Go ahead.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, I guess. Can everyone see me?
In a second, I think Sophie will bring you on the screen. There you go.
Okay. Yeah. Hopefully you can see the. What I'm going to do here is essentially run you through our PowerPoint on Tartisan Nickel Corp. Thank you for joining. Tartisan Nickel Corp is a CSE listed company. TN on the CSE, also listed in Frankfurt, Munich, in the United States. Standard disclaimer. Essentially,
Mark,
Tartisan.
I'm
Yes?
sorry to interrupt. We can't see the presentation.
Okay.
So if you can click your share screen, and then you should be able to go to basic and then share the presentation.
Okay. How about now? Can you see me now?
Yes, I can see you. If you just want to put your presentation into slideshow mode, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Or that works as well, either or.
Yeah, I'm even trying to. I think am I not there now or no? You can see the presentation?
We can, and we're on the investment thesis slide.
Okay, apologies. All right, well, we'll just continue along here. So Tartisan Nickel Corp became a public company in 2012, sort of cutting to the chase in 2018. Having looked at the battery metal space, we decided to bring a new sort of investment thesis to bear, and that was to use Tartisan as a company that had acquired opportunistic properties, being in Peru, and through the acquisition of Canadian Aero Mines Limited, to acquire the Kenbridge nickel deposit and the Alexo Helix deposit in Timmins. So the Kenbridge deposit is a historic Canadian asset. Originally, Falconbridge developed in the 1950s. And essentially, through the efforts of Falconbridge, they started to develop a significant resource. So why the Kenbridge? Well, short answer is we're a small capex class 1 nickel project, which can be put into production quickly. There were originally historic resources in PEAs, and over the last 2 years, we've now brought the mineral resource estimate current. So as of September 2020, there's roughly a resource of 8.5 million kilotons measured, indicated, and inferred that roughly grades about 0.67. So translating into roughly 120 million pounds of nickel sulfide. Accessible location, great infrastructure. We're located off the highway, very close proximity to the Rainy River project. We have established First Nations treaties and work plans with them. So bringing the company to a permitting stage would be somewhat easy process for us to do, and something that we could expeditiously do as well. We can get into the timing of bringing this whole thing forward shortly. Regional geology, I mean, you can see our location in perspective with other, you see the little red dots, those are other nickel plays, nickel showings on the geological belt, fairly close to the Mayburn mine. Accessible by four-wheel ATV. We could expand a road that would go in and would be part of the go forward process. Aerial view, you can see the red circle sort of indicates where there's a proposed open pit. Arrow right in the middle sort of shows you where there's an existing 2,000 meter 3-compartment shaft. Some highlights of the resource MRE update, but essentially measured and indicated 95 million 95 million pounds of nickel, getting closer to 8 million ton. Block model, you can see right down the center is the 622 meter 3-compartment shaft. You get an idea of up near the surface where there's a proposed open pit. And you can see how you go sort of down plunge to the very bottom of the picture where you can see that we're open at depth. And the nickel grades actually increase at depth. So part of the go forward strategy in this type of gabbro deposit would be to expand the resource at depth, do some infill drilling, and have a look at what we want to call the north target. So you can see sort of the top left, you'll see the host gabbro deposit. And you can also see sort of the where you can see on the right where there's another geophysical response that showed up in the various studies that have been conducted on the property. To this day, that target has never been drilled, and we sort of liken these images as other carrots in the field, with Kenbridge deposit being the initial carrot, and we believe there are other carrots here. So in other words, mirror images to the Kenbridge deposit. So we feel that this is by no means something that has been exhausted in terms of the exploration, but just the beginning. PEA done, which occurred in 08, showed an initial interesting economics. You can see with average recoveries of about 87%, you've got a pre-tax NPV of around $250 million. So why is the MRE that we just put out in September relevant to this historic PEA? And while we want to get on with updating the PEA, and we'll be doing this within the next 6 months, the MRE is really relevant in the sense that the economics mirror what we found in 08. So while the nickel price was $10 in 08, and that was one of the variables that we plugged into the model, We used the 749 nickel price average in the MRE. And while the dollar price was 90 cents in 08, US Canada exchange rate, 75 cents today. So you essentially, what you're giving up in the nickel price, you're gaining back in the exchange rate. And interestingly enough, the economics almost come out to the same amounts. So we would want to update the historic PEA so to bring that current. And an effective tool, obviously, if we're going to go out and try and raise larger money in the quest to bring this into production. So what are the next steps? Well, quite simply, the groundwork has already been laid out for this project. It was all done by Canadian Aero Mines Limited. And as we brought in our group of advisors, namely Dean McEachran, former CEO of Canadian Aero, who we work with closely, Tom Larson, who's got substantial experience in finance and bringing projects to near-term production scenarios, and the CEO of Alloro Resources, who we're partnered with, and Ron Wartell, who significant Bay Street experience, worked with mineral fields, literally has raised upwards of $1 billion over time in doing flow-through financings on the street, all coming in to lend advice. So, as we said, initiating responses with through our social outreach, and treaty number 3, bringing that more current and part of the permitting process to discuss next steps, initiate the new PEA, outline the exploratory drilling to expand that resource. And what we would like to do is really begin that in February of next year. And why February? Well, it will take a period of time to get your permitting, although not long. It's a matter of going through that process, which we've talked about with re-engaging with the First Nations and with the ministry, and utilizing the frozen lake as an effective drill platform to drill more at depth, get the angles that we're looking for, drill the high grade at depth, and do some infill drilling, doing some extra basic geotechnical work, assessing the mineralogy and metallurgical testing, see if we can improve our recoveries, and go after some of these other targets that we talked about. There is an interesting gold anomaly on the project. We are in good company with obviously the Mayburn and with Rainy River to go and have a look at that gold target. There certainly is our north target, which would definitely be something that we would want to put some holes into to see whether we have something in the shadow of the head frame, so to speak. And the budget that we've put on screen here is essentially comes right from the MRE, the mineral resource estimate, and as put together by P&E. So you can see a great deal of the money is for this extension drilling, additional exploration drilling, and other basics to bring the PEA forward. Basic information about the corporation. I've got a finance background. I've been in the business since 1987 and worked in a variety of disciplines, but more recently I've had significant experience with Guyana Goldfields. Back in 1996, 97, 98, went on as a director and found ourselves in similar circumstances where coming out of a depressed state of affairs in the market, and ended up going into a gold market, and really tried to build a company by not diluting the shareholders to death. Tartisan hasn't done a conventional financing in 32 months, you know, and there's a reason why we haven't done that. We've sort of taken a patient, prudent approach to building out the asset and not wanting to dilute shareholders. And as a shareholder of some significance myself, thought that the patient approach and allowing the market to come to us certainly, I think, is going to prove out for us somewhat here. Certainly see the EV world becoming more mainstream. You certainly see the golden horseshoe in Ontario here with significant corporate government investment. The world moving from fossils into electric vehicles. And we're now well positioned to, I think, take advantage of this new positioning. We've turned down 3 financings, lower levels so far. We think that we can add some value by bringing the PEA forward, by marching towards a drill program. And just touching on our other investments briefly, the spinning out of La Victoria and the San Marquito into Eloro for cash shares and an NSR certainly has proved itself out, along with the LXO Helix spinning out the Class 1 nickel and technologies. So, I mean, that investment portfolio on its own is now worth $7 million+ and something that we can draw upon to essentially avoid dilution here while we try and get ourselves to a significantly higher re-rating of the company. Tax loss carry forwards of $10 million+. There's no warrants outstanding. There are a few options. And a market cap right now of roughly slightly less than what you see on the screen, but about $24 million. So, you know, we see ourselves with an in situ metal value of $1 billion. It's certainly within reason for us to be working towards a $75 million to $100 million market cap, so 10% of in situ. You see our peers in Class 1 nickel, for example, are the asset that we spun out with a $70 million market cap, very similar market, very similar capital structure, and us with a $25 million market cap. So there's real reasoning for us to believe that there's lots of runway here. And, you know, I could talk about our competitors, but I mean, I think maybe best to just thank you all for bearing with me here. And if there's any questions that you'd like to ask, be happy to answer them.
So thank you, Mark. We do actually have a couple of questions. So I'm going to bring those up right now. One question that was interesting, are you a miner or an explorer?
Well, I think we've been very successful about bringing this to the next level. And the bottom line is we're fully prepared to bring this to a production situation. The PEA calls for a 28 ton per day enterprise. We feel that we can do all of that if we fired the gun tomorrow in 3 years or less. Given that we're below 3,000 ton per day, brings us below certain federal hurdles where we can, with the works of Canadian Aero, that we can take this to production in a rapid form. And we certainly have the individuals surrounding the deal, the expertise to get us there. So, you know, we're prepared to get there. Remains to be seen who approaches us along the way. With the musts of the world saying, bring us more nickel, well, we're here and we think we're going to be bringing it on a stainless steel coated platter. So
So funny enough, that's one of my next questions for you is, have any majors talked to you about your property? And quite similar question, have you been approached to do a streaming deal with a big company?
Well, the short answer is yes on a few different levels. So Tartisan Nickel's been approached by 2 auto manufacturers to see what sort of an investment they could put into the company and what would get to them. We left things with them that they wanted to see. We wanted to bring them the new MRE, and we wanted to advance the whole project and get into updating the PEA. Kenbridge already has an offtake agreement with Glencore. So that agreement is in place. That is an offtake agreement on commercial terms where they would have first right of refusal to take concentrates from that mine. Now, by no means are we beholden to them. Again, it's on commercial terms. If there was a situation that was brought to us and they were unable to match that situation, then that by all means is fair game.
Okay, very interesting. Um, let's see here. Has COVID impacted your operations in any way whatsoever?
I think only initially where there were shutdowns and there were travel restrictions. I think now just finished following ministry guidelines, we certainly could in a safe way organize and mobilize a drill program, and certainly bring forward our various relationships with First Nations, et cetera. So I think, the one thing that remains to be seen is how quickly we could expedite sort of the permitting process with the ministry. But given that Canadian Arrow has already laid that groundwork, it's not like we're starting from ground zero. It's more of an update, and we're feeling that if we wanted to drill by February for that reason we discussed about a frozen lake, that we would be able to meet those various hurdles.
So you think that by February you'd be able to get the permits?
Permitting and drills turning, yes.
Oh, excellent. Are the properties 100% yours? Are there any royalties on them?
We own the property 100% outright. A bunch of the properties are patented grounds. There are no work commitments. There are 2 NSRs, one held by the former NiStar and one held by Glencore.
And would you consider buying out those NSRs, or you're comfortable with keeping them right now?
Both NSRs are on the table, and there are some discussions with both holders of those NSRs. So
That's fair.
subject to negotiation, shall we say.
What's the production mining timeline?
Well, if we fired the gun today, we feel that we could bring this into production in 3 years or less. So, again, 2,800 ton per day. There's a reason why that number is there, and that's below the 3,000 ton per day federal level. So, sort of in a walk before you run, and as expeditiously as possible, we could walk along that path, and we feel fairly confident that in 3 years or less, that's achievable.
Excellent. What's your cash position, and do you have any debt?
There certainly is no long-term debt. Sort of cash and marketable securities right now is roughly $7.2 million.
Very good. We discussed that. Is there any significant infrastructure on site?
Well, it's just a good question. So there was an existing road into site. We rehabilitated that road 2 years ago. So you can get into the road by four-wheel ATV now, snowmobile, etc. In order to actually get trucks in there, we would have to do some more road rehab. Um, we're surrounded by lakes, so obviously lots of water. There is a camp right there on site that you could easily sleep 40 people. So that's all significant infrastructure. And we talked about a 622-meter shaft that's existing there. It's capped and flooded at the moment. We have scoped that shaft in the last 5 years or less. That was all done through Arrow. It's in good shape, but remains to be seen what we would do with that, whether that would become more of a ventilation situation or a rehabilitation. But I mean, to recreate that shaft would be significant dollars. The camp is ready to go. Access is available, and we're within a stone's throw of the highway. So while there's a hydro line 35 kilometers away, that's something we would be looking at on a go forward basis. We have, as considerations to PEA, we've got a few options to go with how to electrify ourselves, but that camp at right now is on solar and wind. So and that's all there. That's good to go now.
Good. So it sounds like there's no barriers for the infrastructure at all.
No, and I mean, we're calling for a green restart. We're attempting to obviously put our money where our mouths are. So there are some discussions with some third parties about bringing this forward totally off the grid.
Wow.
So that's all something that's happening behind the scenes, and hopefully there's some things to discuss here in 2020 along those lines.
Sounds very exciting. Paul, do you have a question or two for Mark?
Yeah, I do. So what you just said, would you consider a joint venture with somebody, like to help split the costs and move it forward quicker?
Yeah, I guess what we would attempt to do, I mean, I don't think we would want to split sort of like an earning into the property. I think we've sort of come this far and would like to preserve as much value for the shareholders. So somewhat insistent that we try and get the company re-rated as the nickel price increases, as we get the PEA going, as we move towards this drill program. But would we look at a partner in the green space to put some project financing in, and for them to have some sort of a preferred rate of return from the cash flow of the Kenbridge? Absolutely. So all of that's on the table. If you look at the IRR of the 2008 PEA, there's a 65% internal rate of return. So there's lots of meat on that bone to help assist with a preferred rate of return for someone that wanted to help along project financing lines.
Okay. Now, Trump a few months ago declared a strategic plan for a number of metals, rare earths, things like lithium, graphite. Nickel was one of them. Can you comment on that and what the significance to you or to Tartisan may be? Is that why Glencore is like snooping around or things like that?
Well, I think Glencore has been approached by the Teslas of the world, and certainly would have the capacity to assist Teslas and those in the Golden Horseshoe. I think Tartisan 100% would be encouraged to bring our nickel sulfide, high grade nickel sulfide, to their smelter. Certainly, they would also have that capacity to utilize our copper as well, which we really haven't touched on, but 66 odd million pounds of copper along with our resource. But no, absolutely. I think as the world transitions from fossils into the electric world, there's not going to be enough. There isn't going to be enough supply to meet demand. And while we're only just, I think, in the elasticity in that nickel price, you know, the Tartisans of the world would be called upon, because I think our competitors are not only their CapExes are, you know, we're 120 million in CapEx. They're 2 billion plus in CapEx in 10 to 20 years, and insisting on a $12 to $15 nickel price. I mean, we can get this thing moving in today's nickel world. So I mean, I think as we transition into the new world, you're definitely going to see the demand for what we have. You're seeing it now. I mean, we're being contacted by more people in the last 90 days than we've ever been contacted by on all levels.
Okay. One last question for you before we wrap it up. Who are your major shareholders?
So management owns approximately of the company. On another 5 shareholders or less, we can get the share base to roughly 55 million shares. So that's essentially on one hand, and then there's another 15 million shares that are within, say, another 25 people or less. So we consider this to be a fairly tightly held company. You know, tightly held meaning, you know, we can get 75 million shares together quite quickly, and we're all people that sort of realize that we want to get this to the finish line. We're not here to make 2, 3, 5, 10 cents or even getting this to 25, 30, 50 cents. I mean, we think that we've got a well-heeled group, and certainly now you've seen our shares sort of move somewhat dramatically. You know, June, July, we were 6 cents. September, we were 15 to 30 on 8 million shares. In October, we're sort of trading between this 20 to 30 band on 2 million shares. So that's sort of answering your questions and me sort of giving a little editorializing on you there. But, you know, I think we've sort of got a little tiger by the tail, and as we sort of flesh this whole thing out, it's interesting who we're being contacted by to see if they can help join in and participate.
Excellent. Mark, thank you so much for today. Much appreciated. We're going to follow you for the next 4 months, make sure that everybody that's looking in and listening in will be updated, and you know, they'll know what's going on. And on one final note, all of this couldn't be done without Sophie. And it's her birthday tomorrow, so happy birthday from me. And away we go, and enjoy the rest of the day, everyone, and be safe, be careful.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Sophie. Happy birthday. And thank you all for taking the time today to join in.
I appreciate it. Take care, everyone.